Ladies and gentlemen, I call to order this hearing of the Readiness Subcommittee of the House Armed Services Committee. First, let's get the administrative details out of the way. Members are reminded that they must be visible on the screen within the software platform for the purposes of identity verification. Members must continue to use the software platform's video function while attending the hearing unless they experience connectivity issues or other technical problems that render the member unable to fully participate on camera. If you're experiencing technical difficulties, God bless you, do the best you can. Otherwise, don't bother us. However, you might contact the committee staff for assistance. I'm not likely to get it, but give it a try. When you are recognized, video will be broadcast via the television, internet feeds. You will be recognized as normal for questionings, but if you want to speak at another time, you must seek recognition verbally. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking and remember to unmute when you do want to speak. Please be aware that there is a slight lag between when you start speaking and when the camera shot switches to you. Please remember to keep the software platform's video function on for the entirety of the time you are attending this hearing. If you leave for a short period for reasons other than joining a different proceeding, please leave your video functions on. If you are leaving to join a different proceeding or will be absent for a significant period, you should exit the software platform entirely and then rejoin when you return. Be advised that I've designated a committee staff member with a very big club to mute unrecognized members, microphones, and the member if necessary. Please use the platform's chat function to communicate with the staff regarding technical or logistic support issues. Finally, you will see a 5-minute countdown clock on the software platform's display. Please be obedient, and if necessary, we'll cut you off. Now, I think all of us have heard that, not with my annotated version, but with that out of the way, a couple of other administrative things. I was telling our participants that we do have votes this morning, a series of votes, 3 of them. I am going to recess this hearing at 11:45 and recommence at 12:15. That allows all of the members to stay with us until 11:45, go to the floor, cast a vote, wait around a few moments, cast a vote on the final bill, and then return to the hearing. So at 11:45, we will break, a recess, and then return at 12:15. The members can then carry on their responsibilities on the floor and return to their responsibilities with the hearing. So with that said, instructions out of the way, I'll read my opening statement. The Department of Defense Organic Industrial Base, which includes military services, depots, arsenals, shipyards, is a critical part of our national defense security enterprise. These facilities are essential for maintaining the complex ships, aircraft, and land systems of the Joint Force. The organic industrial base must be postured to support today's requirements while remaining agile enough to respond to mobilization, national emergencies, and ever-changing platforms. I have significant concerns about the organic industrial base's aging infrastructure and the capacity of these facilities to sustain the next generation of weapon systems and support surge requirements. The Government Accountability Office has found that more than half of the DoD's industrial base facilities are in poor conditions, including all 4 public shipyards. While the Navy has developed an ambitious shipyard infrastructure optimizational plan, which I understand they're about to change the name of, which would recapitalize the public shipyards over 20 years at a cost of some $21 billion. I'm concerned that the Navy will not dedicate the necessary resources to prioritize this effort, and that the 20-year time horizon is very long and probably too long to support a very changing fleet. The other services infrastructure modernization plans are in various stages of maturity, and I look forward to hearing about the status of these plans. As with the Navy's shipyard plan, these will require senior leadership commitment and sustained resources. Resources meaning money and attention to reach completion. Even as we look towards modernizing our facilities and equipment to support the next generation of weapon systems, we continue to rely on legacy platforms that will be serving well past their intended life cycles. I'm concerned that overly optimistic timelines for fielding new platforms leaves the organic industrial base insufficiently prepared to service these legacy systems. As a result, the services pay a premium for old technology that is less capable, not fuel efficient, dependent on limited network of suppliers, and reliant on obsolete manufacturing processes. Amidst all of our modernization efforts, we cannot neglect to plan, resource, and implement the solutions needed to ensure our legacy equipment is available and safe for use. I'm going to just add to the statement here. Uh, I am very, very concerned that when we bring new equipment and platforms on, we're not planning properly for their ongoing maintenance. Finally, a strong workforce is also essential to the success or failure of the depot enterprise. The federal civil servants working on these facilities across the globe contribute unique skill sets that we cannot afford to lose. We must ensure that we can hire, train the next generation in a timely fashion, give them protection and rights they deserve for their services. Congress has granted various flexibilities to permit more timely hiring of qualified personnel and to better compete with the private sector. We must continue our oversight of these authorities to ensure that they're efficient, effective, and they uphold the competitive and merit-based principles that are a function and foundation of the civil service. Finally, for the past year has revealed unforeseen challenges for the organic industrial base, from pandemic preparedness to supply chains fragility. I look forward to hearing from our panel about how these organic industrial base is adapting to solve these and other questions. George Washington said that to be prepared for war is one of the most effective means of preserving the peace, and credible deterrence is indeed a central focus of the Readiness Subcommittee. A healthy organic industrial base is essential to our preparedness. I look forward to discussing how we can strengthen this key pillar of readiness today. So with that, I looked at the screen a moment ago, and there is my friend Doug Lamborn. I turn it over to you, Doug. Doug, your staff has instructions about the break that we'll be taking at 12:15. So go ahead, Doug.
Very good. Okay. Well, thank you, Chairman Garamendi. I want to thank all of our witnesses for being here today and for their testimony and service. The organic industrial base is a vital and important part of our readiness and ultimately our national security. The talented men and women who work in our nation's depots, arsenals, shipyards, and logistics complexes ensure that our warfighters have the equipment that they need when they need it and that it works as designed. Equipment that is more often than not well beyond its service life, but still performing vital missions. As our nation started to feel the impacts of COVID-19 this time last year, the organic industrial base also began tackling how to fulfill their mission while protecting the workforce. Each of the services dealt differently with the problem of touch labor that couldn't be conducted from home. And I look forward to hearing from each of our witnesses what they learned and how they are incorporating these lessons into their planning going forward. COVID also highlighted that this workforce is aging. These are highly skilled artisans with years of experience. I would like to hear from both of you how you are using your authorities to help hire and train the next, I would like to hear both how you are using your authorities to help hire and train the next generation, and also what we can do to help you be innovative in this area. We need to explore different ways to increase the supply of young people joining the skilled labor market to meet these growing demands. Not everyone needs a 4-year college degree, but the nation needs more men and women working in skilled trades. Another issue we see across the services is infrastructure that is not being invested in to maintain the current workload or prepare for modern systems or modern practices. Too often, these are areas that the services have taken budget risk, leaving us with facilities and utilities that were built over 50 years ago. The Navy has a particularly acute problem in this area. The GAO has assessed that all 4 public shipyards are in poor or failing condition with too few functional dry docks. Just last year, the Navy decided to scrap the fire-ravaged Bonhomme Richard, at least partially due to the lack of dry dock space needed to repair it. That we have so little trade space when it comes to the schedule should be concerning to us all. In response to these concerns, the Navy has put forward the Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Plan, or SIOP, to invest $21 billion into the public shipyard's aging dry docks, equipment, and infrastructure. I look forward to seeing this year's budget and the resources that the Navy is committing to this area, because without real dollars, we can't make the progress needed. Finally, I would like to hear from the witnesses how you are managing your sustainment planning. While this committee has certainly talked about how it impacts carryover, and that is something we are still interested in, it also touches everything from training to budgets to hiring. Unfortunately, there aren't many easy answers here, but I know the chairman and I are both committed to working with you all to ensure that the organic industrial base has what it needs to continue to support our men and women in uniform. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Lamborn. I will now turn to our witnesses. Your written testimony is available to all the members and without objection will be part of the record. So ordered. We'll now start with Lieutenant General Dwayne Gamble, Deputy Chief of Staff, G4, United States Army. General.
Chairman Garamendi, Ranking Member Lamborn, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on the Army's organic industrial base. Your support of our OIB, of Army readiness and all Army initiatives is absolutely critical to our success. As we described last May in my virtual update to your subcommittee, we've stayed on track with all our initiatives despite the COVID-19 operating environment. As we continue to operate in this environment, the execution of our mission and the safety of our workforce has been our top two priorities. At the outset of COVID, we immediately implemented CDC guidelines for all our facilities. We maximized the use of personal protective equipment, and we placed high-risk personnel on administrative or weather and safety leave. These actions helped our workforce stay safe, but as importantly, helped our depots and arsenals continue to produce readiness for our Army and our nation. At no time during the pandemic did any of our facilities shut down. In FY21, our OIB plans to execute over $8 billion of work to sustain and modernize weapon systems across our Army and across the other services, as well as to support foreign military sales. And to complete that work, our facilities will work approximately 14 million direct labor hours this year. I'd just like to compare that 14 million to the workload levels of 2002 and 2003, which were the front end of our war on terror. Direct labor hours that we plan this year is down from a wartime peak of 30 million direct labor hours. And so my point there is just to tell you that it is cyclical, the workload in our depots, but every direct labor hour is very important to maintaining the skills we need in our artisan workforce and the readiness our Army and our country needs. We believe this workload will preserve current fleet readiness and help modernize our weapon systems to get modern equipment to our units today. As you know, the work that is funded but not executed at the end of the fiscal year is defined as carryover. And since I first briefed this subcommittee in November 2019, we've worked with the Office of the Secretary of Defense and the other services to develop, and hopefully deliver, a carryover calculation pilot program, which is pending final approval from the Office of Secretary of Defense, that would allow us, the Army, to exclude material from our calculation. The simple reason for that is the Army's Enterprise Resource Planning System, our ERP, employs generally accepted accounting principles to achieve auditability. But unfortunately, that same ERP artificially inflates the Army's carryover by including the value of the repair parts that we've invested in to produce the readiness in our depots. The other services do not have that challenge. Excluding repair parts, today the Army has 6.22 months of carryover, right above the OSD threshold of 6 months of carryover. That, for comparison, is down from just a year ago when it was 10 months of carryover. But if we were to look through the lens of the current calculation, it would be interpreted as 8 to 9 months of carryover. But again, If we were to put apples to apples comparison with the other services, we'd have 6.22 months of carryover. Carryover is absolute paramount to bridging appropriations, to helping smooth workflow, and to keep our artisans hard at work building readiness across our Army. At the same time we execute our workload, the Army and our OIB must modernize for the future. And Chairman and Ranking Member, you both talked about the importance of the modernization of our OIB. As I've testified this committee before, we have World War II era facilities, and many of them are outdated for today's requirement, let alone the needs of the future force, as you described, Chairman. We spent more than $3 billion since 2009 to upgrade our facilities and infrastructure and operating environment, to include building a new nitrocellulose facility at Radford Army Ammunition Plant, one of our single points of success or failure, depending on how we look at that. We're also working a new nitric acid facility at Holston Army Ammunition Plant. Both create a safer and more productive environment for our employees and for readiness. In FY21 alone, we're executing $800 million to make essential improvements and upgrades to our depots, arsenals, and ammo plants. The OIB has a long road, however, to becoming fully modernized, a fully modernized industrial base, but we are actively working to that end state, and we're executing the plan that I briefed this committee on November of 2019. While we execute that plan, we continue to update the plan to to keep pace with modern technology. And as we modernize our Army, we must ensure we modernize the OIB and the workforce, and that the workforce is highly trained and on the cutting edge of technology. Ranking Member Lamborn, you mentioned in your opening comments about the average age of the OIB workforce across the Department of Defense. I'm happy to report that the average age of the Army is now 46 years old across our whole industrial base. That is a rejuvenated workforce just in the last few years, and the authority we use to do that was granted by this committee. It's the direct hiring authority that we put to good use, bringing the average age of the workforce down. Those 22,000 skilled employees operating across our depots, arsenal, and ammo plants are absolutely the backbone of our country's readiness for the next war and our OIB. As you know, the Army's OIB is of COVID-19. I believe that's a testament to the dedication of our workforce and their commitment to our Army and our country. Key pieces of our workforce modernization plan are our partnerships with private corporations, our partnerships with universities, and our partnerships with technical colleges and technical programs in our high schools to provide skills and technological training, and to connect with a talent pool to help us recruit the future workforce. In closing, I'd like to thank you and all the distinguished members of this committee, not only for your support to our OIB, your continued oversight of our execution, but for your service to our country. Our Army continues to execute workload, improve our infrastructure and facilities, and develop and employ a highly talented workforce. We seek your continued support and partnership in each of these areas to achieve the modernized ORB. The future of our Army and the future of our country depends upon, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, General. Now I'll turn to Vice Admiral William Galinas, Commander, Navy Sea Systems Command. Admiral, your turn.
Hey, Chairman Garamendi, Ranking Member Lamborn, distinguished lawmakers, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss our organic industrial base within the Navy. As this committee knows, the Navy has been executing the Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program since 2018. The SIOP will deliver the shipyards our Navy and our nation needs by upgrading and expanding principally our dry dock capacity, but also optimizing and improving our infrastructure and workflow within the shipyards, as well as recapitalizing obsolete equipment. When completed, our shipyards will be ready to service our fleet for generations to come. Our written testimony provides a glimpse and some detail into the SIOP highlights and the ongoing work. And overall, while I'm generally pleased with the progress we have made to date, I will tell you we have much to do, and I, along with you and many of your colleagues, want us and need us to move faster. To that end, I've challenged the SIOP Program Office to find ways to accelerate this execution timeline, and I look forward to sharing that information with the committee in the future as we come through this effort. While SIOP addresses the needed physical changes required in our public yards to keep our submarines and aircraft carriers in the fight, more work is required. We need to become more accurate and more efficient in our planning and the execution of our depot level availabilities for our submarines and aircraft carriers. Finally, we need to continue to build on our talented and dedicated workforce that we have within our public shipyards. I will tell you in no uncertain terms, we need now to expand the productive capacity of our naval shipyards, or we run the risk of not being able to perform the required maintenance and repair work for our nuclear-powered fleet, principally our submarines and aircraft carriers, a decade from now. To do this, we've taken a page out of the NAVAIR playbook and their successful execution of the Naval Sustainment System, aviation, in an effort to support our naval aviation enterprise. Leveraging the Navy's performance to plan effort that you've heard about, led by our Chief of Naval Operations and our Vice Chief, we have stood up our own Naval Sustainment System shipyard. And like NSS Aviation, NSS Shipyard combines the extensive use of data and data analytics. It targets areas of opportunity with transparency to highlight key problems to improve our outcomes. We're committed to doing this with a sense of urgency across our enterprise. NSS Shipyard is a significant departure from our previous practices. Leveraging the best commercial practices, we're incorporating these into our shipyards and embracing a new culture built on honest assessments informed by data and coupled with a bias toward action and a sense of urgency to drive process improvements. NSS Shipyard is still in its formative phase, but when you combine it with SIOP and a talented and trained workforce, our Navy will have the organic maintenance and repair capability and capacity now and in the future to support our submarine and aircraft carrier fleet to fight and to win in this area of great power competition. And while the work we're doing in our shipyards is a key effort, there is much more we are doing to improve our ability to generate readiness and sustain our force, including improving our planning and execution process, addressing material availability issues, expanding our use of condition-based maintenance, and working to improve access to critical technical data. I look forward to discussing this and many other topics with you. And again, I thank you for this opportunity to appear before the committee, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Admiral. We now turn to Vice Admiral Dean Peters, Commander, Naval Air Systems Command. So, Admiral Peters.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Lamborn, distinguished members. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss naval aviation and the health of our organic industrial base. Since day one in command, the NAVAIR industrial workforce and infrastructure have been my top priority, and I look forward to updating you on our progress. In conjunction with the Air Boss, Vice Admiral Weitzel, and the Deputy Commandant for Aviation, Lieutenant General Wise, we are systematically stabilizing naval aviation readiness for both the present and long term. And we've made significant progress in fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20, increasing fleet mission capable rates by over 14%. That's an additional 330 mission capable aircraft for aircrew training and operations. A critical component, of course, is our organic maintenance capability, both intermediate level and depot level maintenance. This organic industrial base, typically called aviation depots, are known as Fleet Readiness Centers, or FRCs, in naval aviation, which I think is a more apt description. During a virtual roundtable with this subcommittee last May, I described a recovery plan for production impacts due to COVID-19, which had temporarily reduced our workforce and had also resulted in numerous material shortfalls. I'm pleased to report that through the efforts of Commander Fleet Readiness Centers, NAVSUP, DLA, and most importantly, each of the FRCs, we were able to exceed production requirements for aircraft and components and came within 1% on engines. This was done while adding capabilities like the F5 Heavy line and while expanding capacity, such as on our T6 line. Financially, we exceeded revenue targets for fiscal year 20 and we made a very positive contribution to the Navy Working Capital Fund. Our allocation of CARES funding that associated with COVID-19 related costs was critical, and we thank this committee for their support. In short, in spite of unprecedented challenges, fiscal year 20 was one of our best production years in recent memory. Most importantly, all fleet aircraft components and engine depot requirements were met, and all in-service repairs were expeditiously completed around the globe, as the Navy and the Marine Corps maintained a very high operational tempo. I could not be more proud of our FRCs and the resilience of our workforce. Speaking of our people, we continue to invest in their quality of life and training. First, in their working conditions. We're at historically low safety incidents. Next, in their digital competence, as we transform our production flow to electronic work packages. We're also continuing the National Apprenticeship Program with 270 apprentices currently on board. In general, the Department of the Navy continues to prioritize investments in our industrial capabilities and capacity. This is informed by the FRC Infrastructure Optimization Report, or FIOP, and that identifies sustainment requirements. It identifies capital investments for machinery and equipment and military construction needs. These investments are especially critical for repair of newer aircraft such as E-2D, H-53K, and F-35, as they require specialized paint, composite repair, advanced propulsion repair, and enhanced security. On the shop floors and production lines, we're building on the reforms that began for Super Hornet in fiscal year 19. We're replicating those across all type model series, including E-2D, H-60, P-8, and V-22 this year. We're also making progress on quality, significantly reducing quality escapes. In addition, we are establishing a data environment to connect all aspects of sustainment, including reliability, product integrity, and maintenance. In this regard, our repair capabilities and our supply chain effectiveness would be greatly enhanced by better access to technical data commonly available to commercial aviation operators and repair facilities. To close, Naval Aviation leadership looks forward to working with this subcommittee and the larger Congress to strengthen our organic infrastructure. We very much appreciate your continued support of our sailors and Marines, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Admiral. I see several of my colleagues from the committee are on now. We're going to break in 15 minutes with a recess and then return at 12:15 so that we could cast a vote on the current vote and vote on the last vote while we're still at the chamber. So heads up, 15 minutes from now, we'll break for half an hour. Okay, let's turn now to Lieutenant General Kirkland, Commander, Air Force Sustainment Center. General Kirkland.
Chairman Garamendi, Ranking Member Lamborn, distinguished members of the subcommittee, I appreciate the opportunity to update you on the Air Force's Organic Industrial Base. On behalf of our Acting Secretary, the Honorable John P. Roth, and our Chief of Staff, General Charles Q. Brown, thank you for your continued support and demonstrated commitment to our military, civilian airmen, families, and veterans. As you will attest in my written statement, the United States Air Force relies upon a strong organic industrial base to deliver air power in support of national defense strategy. We are proud of the capabilities our Air Force brings to the OIB. Our logistics enterprise effectively uses existing infrastructure across our 3 depots and 2 supply chain wings to provide cost-effective readiness for a range of weapon systems. Since my last update to this subcommittee in 2019, we accepted the first KC-46 Pegasus refueling aircraft for its initial depot maintenance at Tinker Air Force Base. We continue to expand F-35 Joint Strike Fighter aircraft depot maintenance at our Ogden Logistics Complex and F-35 avionics repair at Warner Robins in Middle Georgia. Looking ahead, our team is preparing for depot support to the B-21 Raider and ground-based strategic deterrent weapon system. We continue to address readiness and sustainment challenges driven by legacy weapon systems, an aging infrastructure footprint, and a federal workforce hiring process that is improving, but not yet conducive to supporting today's environment. As detailed in our organic industrial base report, we are structuring our optimization plan over the next 20 years along a three-pronged investment strategy: keep up, catch up, and leap ahead. Through a combination of our capital investment program and new mission military construction, the Air Force has invested more than $2 billion during the previous 4 fiscal years to maintain and improve depot infrastructure and equipment. These service investments exceeded the minimum 6% threshold and were focused on the keep-up requirements while targeting specific advanced technologies and concepts to modernize depot capacity and capability. We will continue to collaborate within the sustainment enterprise to incorporate, expand, and evolve use of advanced manufacturing processes and tools across our organic depots and benefit from predictive analytics. Responding to COVID-19 challenges highlighted the importance of understanding supply chain risks to depot operations and mission readiness. Over the past year, we relied on our supply chain management wing's ability to detect and forecast supplier impacts, allowing us to pursue alternate sources and make risk-informed depot prioritization decisions. Our initial response to COVID used a combination of intense safety mitigations, targeted telework, and placing high-risk personnel on weather and safety administrative leave. To meet production requirements, however, we began a return to full capacity of mission central employees in May and completed that by July. We've seen a positive trend in our workforce demographics. The current age of the Air Force Sustainment Center workforce is 44.5 years. This is down 1 year in age from 2018 and is a solid 3 years lower than the overall Air Force civilian employee average. Looking at STEM workforce, our software enterprise, which now comprises 4,600 personnel, ranges from 39 years old to 42 years old average across our 3 air logistics complexes. As we continue to respond to the ongoing pandemic, our top priority remains the health and safety of our workforce while balancing mission readiness. Unsurprisingly, COVID aggravated a variety of ongoing challenges with depot production across our enterprise. We continue to institutionalize new workplace arrangements to protect our workforce. Our union teammates have been a strong partner on this journey. Regarding civilian workforce hiring and development, we greatly benefit from the tools provided by direct and expedited hiring authorities to stay competitive with our defense industry peers. Thank you for providing these authorities and your consideration to make them permanent. In every instance of crisis, the Defense Organic Industrial Base provides solutions to anticipated demands. The Air Force will continue to need Congress's help with investments to foster for increasingly sophisticated and contested battle space. Our Chief of Staff has made clear, we either accelerate change or lose. Consistent, reliable, and predictable funding is key to sustaining Air Force readiness and safety, and to guarantee our service's ability to fly, fight, and win. Thank you, Chairman and Ranking Member. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, General Kirkland. We now turn to Major General Joseph Schrader, Commanding General, Marine Corps Logistics Command. General Schrader.
Sir, good morning. Chairman Garamendi, Ranking Member Lambourne, and distinguished members of this subcommittee. I appreciate the opportunity to provide you an update on our efforts to modernize the Marine Corps' organic industrial base. In November 2019, I shared with this subcommittee the Marine Corps' plan to modernize its organic industrial base. The plan is comprised of 3 phases and is executed over a 25-year period. It calls for a combination of improvements to the existing manufacturing processes, introduces new technologies, and adds new facilities and infrastructure. To date, we have completed 3 of the first phase major military construction projects. These state-of-the-art facilities provide much-needed combat vehicle storage and capacity, which is critical OIB infrastructure. Another critical component of our modernization effort is naval logistics integration. Initiatives such as our ongoing migration of our Navy Work and Capital Fund activities to the Navy Enterprise Resource Planning System and industrial supply integration with the Defense Logistics Agency are examples of such joint force enabling efforts. Also, as a DoD selected 5G test site, we are working with OSD to develop 5G enabled smart warehouse technologies such as handheld scanners, optical character recognition, passive RFID, and robotics. This state-of-the-art technology vastly improves our supply chain efficiency, auditability, and support to the Fleet Marine Force. Underpinning these efforts is our smart application of operations and maintenance funding. Logistics Command optimizes the Marine Corps' return on these funds by deliberately planning against known and forecasted Fleet Marine Force ground equipment readiness requirements. We identify the most efficient and effective depot sources of repair, while also closely managing our Title X core logistics and Depot 50/50 requirements. Your support in funding these projects, as well as our equipment maintenance priorities, is much appreciated and brings us closer to accomplishing our modernization goals. On the energy front, I want to briefly share with the subcommittee that the Marine Corps Logistics Base here in Albany has made great strides in its plan to become the first installation in Marine Corps history to achieve net zero renewable versus traditional energy usage. Through innovative technology applications such as geothermal heat pumps, borehole thermal technologies, and converting landfill methane gas to energy, the base's roadmap to net zero and energy resiliency program is nearly completed. As a result, we expect to save over $4 million per year beginning next year and become less dependent on the commercial power grid. Looking forward, we've begun a study aimed specifically at aligning all of these current modernization efforts with our Commandant's planning guidance, priorities, and our Force Design 2030 efforts. This study is on pace to inform our fiscal year 23 and 24 budget cycles, and we anticipate it will lead us to refine the OIB's key lines of effort to better support the Fleet Marine Force well into the 21st century. Regarding our workforce, the 2018 National Defense Strategy rightly identifies recruiting, development, and retention of a highly qualified workforce as essential for warfighting success. Accordingly, we've implemented a strategic plan with 6 goals. These goals are hiring the right people, providing the best training, talent management, improving communications, maintaining a professional work environment, and retention. Also, I mentioned in the past, we are very grateful to the Congress for the direct hiring authorities. These authorities have enabled us to compete on par with the private sector to quickly hire the most talented people our communities have to offer. With respect to COVID-19, we continue to ensure mission accomplishment while protecting our people from the virus. Although we are still seeing reports of new cases within our surrounding communities, the overall number of cases continues on a downward trend. We continue to maximize remote and telework arrangements and enforce strict adherence to guidelines set forth by the CDC and higher headquarters. We are actively also working with and are very thankful for the great support we've received from the Naval and community hospitals across our regions. In conclusion, sir, I want to thank you again. I want to thank the subcommittee for its continued support and for the opportunity to testify on this important topic. And I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, General. As promised, in about 5 minutes, we're going to recess for a half an hour. That'll allow the members to catch the current vote, the end of the current vote, and the beginning of the last vote. We'll return no later than 12:15 to recommence the hearing. I'm going to take just a few moments to lay out a couple of questions. I don't expect to get a response because we won't have time. First of all, I want to thank all of the services and particularly the leadership for staying on these issues. This committee is very, very concerned about the organic industrial base, that over the years it's been allowed to atrophy, to age out, and do the very best they could with old facilities, old capital equipment, and in many cases, old technologies to maintain the equipment that the services needed. We're now in a modernization program for all of the services. And as our colleagues on the other subcommittees go about the business of acquiring the new equipment, I want to make sure that this subcommittee is fully aware and that the services are prepared to service that new equipment. I see Joe Courtney just stepped off for a few moments, but he likes to be called 2 or 4 Sub Joe. Fine. Let's see what you're going to do. How is the Navy going to repair and maintain those new Columbia class submarines? Similarly with the Air Force and the Army and the Marine Corps, substantial changes are in place. I want to make sure that all of you in each of your responsibilities are preparing for the future. And so as we go forward, our professional staff will be querying you on how you will be addressing the new pieces of equipment, the repair and maintenance of that equipment. Secondly, I want to make sure that you are utilizing big data in anticipation of what needs to be repaired. So the analysis of past data, of repairs that have been made, using that information and then continuing to gather information ahead of the equipment coming into the depot so that you know what is going to be repaired. I'm calling this the Big Data AI initiative. I've talked to all of you about this. Hopefully that will allow you to be more efficient. Thirdly, we need to know well ahead of time. You've talked about 20-year plans, 30-year plans in the case of one of you. That's all well and good. I'm operating, well, all of the members on this committee operate on a 2-year cycle. And I guarantee you, we're already thinking about the next 18 months and planning for the next 18 months. We'll give you a little longer than that. So I'd really like to know what you're going to do over the next 5 years so that we can look at the MILCON as well as the O&M operations. It is our intent that you have the resources necessary to move out the old equipment that is no longer effective or efficient. The new facilities, I remember 2 years ago going to Tinker and observing a whole lot of blue tarps inside the building, presumably either to catch flies or rain. I suspect it was about rain. So, and that's not only an Air Force issue, I'm sure it's across the board. So I want those facilities modernized, and I want to know how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, and how much money you need to do it. I'm here to fight for you, but I need to know what you need so that we can take on the rest of the subcommittees and the Appropriations Committee and make sure that you have the money you need to modernize and to make sure your facilities are in place. So these are the issues that are out there. I don't expect an answer now, but I can assure you that the professional staff and me and my colleagues will be querying you on a rather regular basis as to the outcome and and where you're headed with that. So we're now at 11:46. I am going to recess. I'm going to recess for 30 minutes, time for the members to vote and to come back, and we'll restart at precisely 12:15. And so this meeting is now in recess. Gentlemen, you can get your answers together. Members, get your questions together, get your votes in. We'll recommence in 1/2 hour. Thank you very much. Reconvene. Committee's in order. We will now proceed. I'm going to give everybody about another, I don't know, a couple of minutes to get their video on, take a deep breath, get yourself organized, and we will take up Mr. Lamborn in about 120 seconds. Start counting, Doug. We'll be good to go. So I don't know. I thought that worked out pretty well. I'm kind of pleased with the prior planning. So the first question to all the generals is, what do the 5 P's stand for? Prior planning prevents, okay, blank performance. Keep in mind that we have a good audience here. Okay, we're going to go at it. I'm watching my clock. I'm anxious to get going here, but I'm going to wait the full one more minute, Doug. In order, Doug Lamborn has the next set of questions.
All right, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for each of the panelists for being here today. As I mentioned in my statement, I believe that we need to develop more ways to increase the supply of young people joining the skilled labor market to meet these future demands. Not everybody needs a 4-year college degree, but our nation needs more men and women who are working in skilled trades. So what are your services doing on this front? And General Gamble, I believe you mentioned an apprenticeship program. We'll start with you.
Congressman, thanks for your question. I think one of our best examples is the Anniston Army Depot. I called it an apprenticeship program. I think they officially call it the internship program. It's the Anniston Army Depot High School Internship Program. I've personally visited. I believe you have as well. It's where they take high school students to help them gain skilled trades and that feed our knowledgeable workforce. They're recruited from high schools not only immediately, but from a 55-mile radius of Anniston Army Depot. So, a pretty broad program there focused on allied trades, things, as you said, skills that they can use for a career. They also have something called the Pathways Program. It's a 3-phase program that helps interns move from high school to technical college tuition assistance. So again, extracurricular to the depot, but providing a pathway for high school students to get advanced training in the public sector and then move non-competitively to a position working for the government. And that conversion is based on space availability. It's not, the program falls short of guaranteeing them a slot. Frankly, I'm not sure we need to, that a permanent assured position is a positive thing because like many of other programs that the Army runs, it feeds the local community as well as feeding our workforce. And the last thing that Anniston does, the third of 3, is educational community partnership. It's an agreement that's based on developing opportunities with local colleges, provide for integration of a student's academic studies, and provide on-the-job experience. That repeats itself all the way from Kaiserslautern, Germany, in one of our industrial facilities in Germany, all the way to Rock Island, Illinois, but I just illuminated Anniston. We can provide details, more comprehensive paper if you'd like, sir.
Okay, and I'd like to hear from the Navy, Air Force, and Marines on this same issue.
Hey, sir, Admiral Ryan is here. I'll jump in on this. Hey, so at the 4 public shipyards, we have a very active apprenticeship program. It's a 4-year program that we recruit people into from the local communities. We've got partnerships in place, generally with the local community colleges. So it's an opportunity for the apprenticeships to earn an associate's degree along the way. And then once we get them in the shipyard, each shipyard has their own learning center established. And, I'll use Portsmouth as an example, where they actually have a mock-up of a compartment on board a submarine that they would take, whether it be a pipe fitter or maybe an insulator or an electrician in, to allow them to essentially kind of work through a work package, if you will, before they actually go and do that, transmit and go down to the submarine. We also, each yard also has its own, within those learning centers, their own skills areas where we train on welding or electrical or ship fitting, metalwork, and whatnot. So we do a lot of that. The other thing that we've also recently done is we've executed an interagency agreement to pilot with the new OPM USA Learning Tool, which, as you know, is the kind of a modern IT platform for training that really allows us to kind of open up and make it available to even more people inside the shipyard, these training opportunities. So that's available to folks that are going through that 4-year apprentice program that I talked to, as well as others. And then the other thing that we've got within the shipyard is a kind of an assessment process where the supervisors can if they identify a shipmate that maybe needs a little bit more work in a particular area or whatever, there's a process to kind of send them back through maybe just a particular part of the training that allows them to kind of refresh that skill set that maybe they might be maybe a little bit lacking on. So those are some of the things that we're doing. But the apprenticeship program that we have at all 4 shipyards and the learning center are absolutely key and foundational to the way we train our workforce. Thank you for the opportunity.
Sure. And Air Force and Marines, do you have similar options going, or a Navy Air?
So Naval Aviation, similar apprenticeship program, 270 currently in that apprenticeship program, and we're using it to try to build loyalty to the depot. So once we train these folks, they don't get pulled away by someone else. Over.
Air Force, Marines, anything to add?
Mr. Lamborn, this is Air Force. Similar to the other services, we continue to bolster and expand our vocational partnerships with the states and the regions. They use our forecast to prioritize their training. We have internships and apprenticeships, which bring them in. And similar to Vice Admiral, it does grow loyalty, and we tend to hire those as well. So we're also expanding our educational partnership agreements with higher education. We've got those in Utah, Oklahoma, and Georgia now. They're very effective to get that STEM workforce we need for our engineering workforce. And the third component would be innovation centers at each of our locations. To give you one example, here I'm in Middle Georgia this week at Robins Air Force Base. And Monday, with Congressman Scott's help, we're going to cut the ribbon on a new facility for our software team. But it has a dedicated classroom for local high school students to come into to get mentored and instructed. And so we see those folks as future employees. Over.
Sir, on the Marine Corps front, very same thing. I would just second the Pathways program. We use that extensively, especially in the depot for welders, painters, and heavy mechanics, heavy vehicle mechanics. Looking to the future, though, we have to make sure that we're zeroing in on C4I type equipment, electronics, coders, those types of things. So we work closely with high schools on internship programs through Pathways, and then also our community colleges, namely Albany Tech here within Southwest Georgia. I think that's worth mentioning.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm glad to hear from each of you that you're making concrete steps to accomplish that goal. This is a question for the Army. Both the Air Force and the Navy received CARES Act funding to increase cash balances last year to offset the impact of COVID. Since the Army didn't get those cash funds, how is the Army dealing with that funding need?
Thank you, sir. Thanks for your question. So there's really 2 components to this. First is our Army Working Capital Fund. And at the time, we honestly didn't think we needed a cash infusion into the Working Capital Fund. to offset the health and safety leave, the increased costs of health and safety leave. Because while we put some on leave, as you know, others worked overtime and longer hours to keep the production running. The state of the OCOF today is we have significant concern inside the Army about the cash balance in our Army Working Capital Fund. And General Daly, our AMC Commanding General, and our Assistant Secretary of the Army for Finance Management and Comptroller are working at we call them pulling levers, right? We're taking action to restore our cash balance. We do believe the Army will need a cash infusion into the Working Capital Fund later this year. We estimate that to be between $600 and $900 million. We're working that inside the Army and with OSD. But there's almost no doubt in our mind that in the next 6 to 8 months, we will need a cash infusion to keep the Army Working Capital Fund solvent to the level where it can continue to produce the readiness it produces today. So today we're not in bad shape. We are concerned and we're watching it closely.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, back to you.
Thank you very much, Doug. Heads up to everybody, the next two will be Courtney Wilson, Luria, and Moore. I think that's 4. So Courtney, Wilson, Luria, Moore, in that order. Joe, your turn. Go.
Great. Thank you, John, and thank you, Doug, for holding this hearing, and to all the witnesses for their testimony on a very important issue. Admiral Galinas, it's good to see you. The last time I in person was up in Maine, -0 temperatures, and I want to again zero in on one aspect of your testimony, which again, first of all, there is universal agreement about the need to recapitalize all the public yards, and frankly, that's been the case on HASC for a number of years. And the SIOP program, I think, sort of is somewhat evidence of that. And anything we can do, to enhance authorities to accelerate that process and ensure that the turnaround for subs and ships is going to improve. I mean, again, there's just across the board help. Having said that, I mean, it's pretty clear that we're not going to be there for a while. And a number of years ago, we had the Congressional Budget Office take a look at the question of whether private yards, which sometimes get utilized, for overflow work, cost that much more in terms of per unit costs versus public yards. And CBO came back with a pretty strong report that, in fact, there is no disparity in terms of cost, in terms of using private yards, whether it's Newport News, EB, Pascagoula, whatever. And so, first of all, I just want to first of all get your take in terms of whether or not you still regard sort of the one shipyard concept, which your predecessor a couple times removed, Admiral McCoy, articulated and really did try to plug in work when, again, there was an overflow as a way of dealing with backlog and also just obviously stabilizing the industrial base, or whether or not you think that at this point, you just want to go to a exclusively public yard approach in terms of dealing with repair and maintenance.
Yes, sir. No, Representative Courtney, thank you for that question. So what I would tell you, one of the things that we're doing as part of the, I mentioned the Naval shipyard sustainment effort, but one of the key elements of that is the development of a 15-year public sector maintenance plan. So this is all of the work that we're doing inside the public shipyards, and we're getting close to finishing that up here within the next month or so, and briefing that up to leadership inside the Navy. But I would tell you, just my preliminary indications of this, and as I mentioned in my opening statement, the SIOP program is fundamental to what we're doing to build that productive capacity that we need inside our public shipyards to do the nuclear maintenance. Even with that being said, I believe, given the what we see as an increasing force structure, especially in the submarine force toward the end of the 20s and into the early 30s, we are going to need capacity in the private sector to do submarine repair work. And that's kind of an initial take on what I see in that coming out of that study. That being said, to your point on the one shipyard concept, that is absolutely true. And we typically, every day we're moving resources, from one yard to another to kind of balance the workload as we need to do so. We are taking a hard look at the work that we are doing inside the shipyards. And as I said, back that productive capacity that we're trying to build, where we're doing work inside of a public shipyard that maybe we could outsource to industry. So not an entire availability, but as you know, we do a lot of work on rotatable pools and repairable items. Is that work, would that be more efficient to do that work, outside in private industry? So, maybe not at another private shipyard, but there's a lot of good machine shops and, smaller businesses that could probably use some of that work. So that's also part of our strategy to increase that capacity. So, those are a couple of things that we're looking at. That 15-year plan, we've got to get that. I think that's fundamental to what we're doing. And then looking for opportunities where we don't maybe necessarily outsource an entire availability, but some of the what we refer to as other productive work, as you know, inside the shipyards that we can outsource. And then just to keep the focus on the SIOP. And to the first part of your question on authorities, sir, I think I have all the authorities I need right now to go and execute that SIOP program. So thank you for that question, sir.
Great. Well, John, when that 15-year plan becomes available, I hope, again, our subcommittee will jump on that, because in some ways it's almost as important as the 30-year shipbuilding plan. And I applaud the fact that NAVSEA is going that route. I'll yield back.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Courtney. We now turn to Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman Garamendi and Ranking Member Lamborn. And I just I'm so impressed and appreciative of our panel today, what dedicated individuals you are, and how impressive it is and inspiring to know that we have such capable persons serving in our military. With General Kirkland, a question. I recently toured the McEntire Joint Air Base here in South Carolina, which is a leading candidate for the upcoming F-35 basing selection. In addition to the extraordinary trained personnel at McEntire, the unique qualifications of the site include virtually no encroachment. It just simply could not be recreated anywhere in continental United States. I would like to know, what is your depot posture to support the critical weapon systems such as F-35 while maintaining your other priorities?
Congressman Wilson, thank you for the question. Sir, with respect to McEntire, I'll just like to address the question fleet-wide. Sir, I think you're aware that 70% of the F-35 costs are related to sustainment, and therefore we pay particular attention to that while working with the Joint Program Office and our Navy Marine Corps teammates. We continue to partner with the JPO to drive down sustainment costs because, sir, the Air Force is fully committed to the F-35 and its fifth-gen capabilities. Sir, I'll speak with, we currently do a depot modification on the aircraft at our Ogden ALC. We are on path to continue to expand that. This year alone, our forecast has increased from 47 to 52 aircraft output. So we own the F-135 engine maintenance. It's the only heavy maintenance center in the enterprise right now, and that has our full attention to drive down costs and increase the output. But sir, perhaps the low-hanging fruit and where we can really save money is in software. You're familiar with the ALICE program being replaced by the ODIN, the Operational Data Integrated Network. We are proud the Sustainment Center will be part of that solution as we migrate from ALICE to ODIN, and we believe we will do it with our organic software team in a very cost-effective manner.
Thank you very much. And Admiral Galinas is a very grateful Navy dad. I appreciate your service. And a question I have for you is how, with the impressive technician pipeline program that you have for virtual learning tools of hands-on and practical exercise, how has the pandemic impacted your ability to continue the necessary hands-on training required to maintaining your workforce?
Yes, sir. No, thank you for that question. So, we've been very fortunate that, I'll say since the pandemic started, roughly a year ago. We have not closed any of our shipyards for a single day. That's both in the public and the private sector. And I give a lot of credit that to the shipyard leadership, as certainly the workforce inside the shipyard. So we have been able to continue both our recruitment, our hiring, and our training efforts over the last year, and we've been able to maintain a pretty steady flow of folks into the shipyard, continue to get them through the pipeline. The other thing, sir, that I'm sure you're aware of is when we went into the pandemic and we looked at the potential impacts on the yards, we activated our surge main force, and so that is a group we brought on active duty about 1,300 reserve sailors that are aligned to the 4 public shipyards, and their reserve time is to train with the shipyards. Okay, so when we have a kind of a shortfall like this with the workforce caused by the pandemic, we've been able to bring these reserve sailors on, and they actually made a significant impact in helping us, work through what would have been work that we would have pushed off. And so we've been able to not totally eliminate that, but certainly mitigate a lot of that impact. So I guess the short answer to your question is we've been able to continue that, and the distance learning, the IT certainly played a big part of that. But even getting folks through the learning centers that I mentioned and everything, we've been able to continue that effort. Yes, sir.
Admiral, thank you very much. And my time is up. But again, I want to thank Chairman Garamendi for getting this panel together. Everyone is outstanding. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Chairman Garamendi, I believe you're muted. Are you calling on me?
I am calling on you, yes. Your
Well,
turn,
thank
5
you.
minutes.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for being here to talk about these very important issues. And I just wanted to start by saying that I think we can't wait any longer to make the investments that we need to in our ship maintenance infrastructure. Investing both our public and our private yards has the effect of adding increased capacity to our fleet in the near term. And if you listen to Admiral Davidson's testimony last week, Commander of U.S. Indo-PACOM, we need that capacity sooner rather than later. So I just want to say that I think that we need to act now. And I concur with Representative Courtney's comments that the shipyard optimization plan is incredibly critical. And I think we need to speed it up. And I'm sort of surprised to hear that you don't feel, Admiral Galinas, that you need any additional authorities or any additional resources to do that. But, I'd really like to be a very strong advocate from this committee and this subcommittee to make sure that you have those resources, because I think the ship maintenance resources are absolutely critical to getting our ships out deployed, providing that forward presence that we need to counter Chinese in the Western Pacific. And I really feel like we need to shift from that mantra that I feel like we have today, where maintenance is driving operations rather than maintenance is supporting and enabling operations. So I just wanted to ask you again, do you need any additional authorities, resources? Ideally, what could we do to speed this up to give that increased capacity? And I'll just quickly give the other example of recently at Norfolk Naval Shipyard. We had the CVN 77 in dry dock and in a docking availability that was going to last 27 months. In a Nimitz class, first docking availability in their life cycle, that should have been about 10.5 months. And the domino effect of that and the dual deployments of the carriers we've seen over the last year, are all impacted by that maintenance backlog. So can you just comment again on anything else that this committee or Congress can do to help speed up your building of your capacity and modernization of the shipyards?
Yes, ma'am. No, thank you for that question, Representative Luria. So let me just to be clear, at this point, I don't believe I need any additional authorities. I did not say we may not need additional resources, because we are working through that right now, and there's a potential we may need additional resources. Okay. One of the things that I've asked the team to look at is, we kind of notionally rolled out, I'll say, a 20-year plan. I asked them to go back and look at what it would take, to do this capitalization in 10 years, in 15 years. And so we're working through that right now. As you well know, one of the things to doing that is being able to integrate the recapitalization work along with the ship repair work that we need to do. And to your point on maintenance, driving, fleet operations, I agree with you on that. It's an area we certainly need to get better. Personally, I think it starts with our planning efforts. Okay, as we build that work package for the ships and the carriers and the submarines going into our public yards, and then once we get them in there, it's all about execution, and we just need to be relentless in that. There are things we're doing to strengthen that. We talked, and I'll just give you 3 quick examples. One is the amount of unplanned work that we push into availabilities once the availability starts. And as you well know, once that happens, and especially if it comes in later in the availability, that's absolutely going to impact your ability to get that submarine or that aircraft carrier out of the yard on time. And so, whether it's rework, whether it's growth work or new work that you don't plan to do once you get in there is very impactful in a negative way. The second item that we're looking at is just what I'll call shop efficiencies, and we're finding some real opportunities within all 4 of our shipyards, quite frankly, to improve the efficiency of our shops, to kind of push work from the shop areas down to the waterfront on board the submarine. A key piece of this, and we've had some of these discussions previously, is the availability of parts, whether those are parts coming from the supply system, those depot level repairable or rotatable pool items that I talked about, just having that available to the mechanic when they need it to get that work done and to continue that process moving. And then the third part of this is really just, I'll just say it's availability management. And I mentioned the Naval Ship Sustainment Effort Shipyard that we're working right now. We brought in, as you know, a group, the Boston Consulting Group, to kind of a world-class, process improvement company that really, brings some best practices from the commercial enterprise that we can look to leverage and incorporate into our shipyards. And just the way we kind of think about when you come up, as you work through an availability and you come up with, unplanned work, or you have an efficiency item, or something that may cause additional time in there, how do we work our way through that in a very expeditious and efficient manner? And frankly, we've kind of lost, I'll say, our edge in that area a little bit. So those are just 3 areas that we're getting after, ma'am, on that area.
Well, thank you for those comments, and I know that my time has expired, and I think that those are critical areas that do need improvement. And what we are asking as the committee is, what do you need from us? What do you need from Congress to implement this? Because it's not just about building ships in the Sea Power Subcommittee; it's about maintaining and using the ships that we have as most efficiently as possible. And a big piece of that is maintenance and getting that maintenance done on time. So thank you again for your comments, and I also wanted to thank Rear Admiral Verhaeg at the NAVSEA War Room. I was able to spend a couple hours with him a few weeks ago and got some insights on the surface fleet side into some of the process improvements that you're making, and really want to be supportive of those. So thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you very much, Elaine. We now turn to, I'm going to give you the next 4 members in order: Moore, Spear, Bergman, Scott. Moore, Spear, Bergman, Scott. Mr. Moore, your turn.
Thank you, Chairman. Sincerely, thank you all for being here today. My questions will primarily be directed towards General Kirkland. General Kirkland, it's great to get a chance to interact again. And again, appreciate your opening statements as well, especially bringing up the importance of STEM and some of those hiring needs. I hope to get a chance to chat with you about that. The organic industrial base, it's essential to the repair and maintenance of the nation's complex array of weapon systems. And a minimum investment requirements designed to only sustain depot performance have left a majority of depots in poor condition, relying on equipment far past its service life. And a course of action to reinvigorate our organic industrial bases requires educating members of Congress on why these facilities are needed, uniting mutual interests across service branches, holding DoD accountable to modernizing efforts and to improve readiness and reduce costs. I am thrilled to be a co-chair of a bipartisan group for the House Depot Caucus. Ogden Air Logistics Complex is in my district, and I know that optimization plans and investment strategy recently just mentioned about in a results-oriented management approach with even some consulting firms that will help us fortify existing optimization plans and maintain that superiority. General Kirkland, one of the first questions I'll ask is, the Air Force depots employ predominantly civilian personnel. How can this committee best help the services where hiring challenges are concerned? How can we best help, in your opinion?
Congressman Moore, thank you for that question, and I look forward to working with forming your leadership on the Depot Caucus. Sir, with respect to your question about civilian personnel, correct. 99% or more of our depot workforce are patriotic civilian employees, Air Force civilians. And sir, I mentioned in my opening comment about how we use DHA and EHA, the Direct Hiring Authority. It is a tremendous tool for us for both recruiting and hiring. It allows us to be more creative, agile, strategic, and candidly also allows us to leverage social media and online databases to attract and recruit employees. Some data, sir, 4 years ago in calendar year 17, our traditional hires for external organization averaged more than 180 days. Last year, using DHA, we got that into the low 60s. And so that is just treating our employees with a lot more respect and makes us more efficient when we have a vacancy. Over those same 4 years, sir, we've gone from 700 or so hires using DHA to over 3,000. So this is a tool that continues to expand in its use. Our Air Force added this to the FY22 Personnel Legislative Review, and we're going to resubmit for 23 as well. Our non-depot workforce, many of them at our installation support the depot for related activities. 68% of those hires are still using traditional methodology. So there is a lot of upside if we could expand and use DHA and EHA more. Congressman, I would add to that an appeal to consider a clean repeal of the 180-day waiting period for retired military members. We are at a disadvantage against our commercial industry peers to retain that talent and experience and specialized skills and security clearances as they leave active duty Air Force and retire. Many of them come back to us eventually, but there is a large group that we do not have access to as they immediately seek employment after retirement. Thank you, Congressman.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that perspective. Let me switch gears quickly to the optimization program. So the shipyard, the Naval Sea Systems Command Shipyard Infrastructure Program is a 20-year, $21 billion effort to modernize infrastructure at shipyard facilities. Do you see a need for comprehensive plan to recapitalize and modernize the entirety of the organic industrial base? That's also to you, General Kirkland.
Congressman, absolutely. As we lay out our organic industrial base plan, and to Chairman Garamendi's point, even though it's a 20-year plan, we are focused primarily on the first 5 years of that. Our three alternatives go 5, 5, and 10 across that. So, sir, our targeted use of the 6% investment, which the Air Force is averaging at 8% right now, are taking care of much of those immediate needs to restructure our depots, build dedicated functional campuses and the like to make us more effective and optimized for the future.
Excellent. And then as my entree, my first quarter in politics and in these committees, I'm realizing how fast 5 minutes go. So I will yield back. Thank you very much for your time. I'll yield back, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. One of the things that I want to just take a moment here is that all of the forces have a plan. We usually see that plan after it has been scrubbed by every other part of the Department of Defense. And it comes to us in a abbreviated or a slow implementation. Basically meaning that the depots often are of a lower priority for the entire department than some other activity. The purchase of a new aerial platform, a new set of ships, or whatever. And it is the work of this committee to push the depot, the maintenance, to a higher priority. To do that, we need to know before all the scrubbing and all the elimination, what is necessary. And so we're going to pursue that. And so heads up, admirals and generals, we're coming at you looking for what you initially needed, not what finally came out in the president's budget. So you know where we're going. If you care to help us, there are ways of getting us information formally, and we would expect that. We're now going to Ms. Spear. Jackie, you're up. Hello, Jackie. May not have come back from the various offices. We'll go to Mr. Bergman. Jackie, your final try here. Okay, Mr. Bergman. Oh,
Well,
yes.
Chairman, thank you. You got close. You traded, when I grew up, my name was Jackie, so I'll just substitute one Jackie for another with this, okay?
We'll take that up with the other Jackie, but in the meantime.
Well, mine was with a Y. I did the same thing with Jackie Rosen when we got here our first term. But anyway, the point is, thanks for the hearing. Thanks for the education. I believe that in listening to my colleagues who've already spoken, I'm really not going to ask any more because sometimes we re-ask the same questions. All I would suggest to you, those of you in uniform who are dialoguing with us today, is that at best, you know, in your business, you've got to have at least an 80% solution out the door. And then as it moves forward, you've got to, if you will, adjust the other 20% to make sure that that ship is deployable to the fight. And what we look for, I believe, on our side of the aisle is that solid, if you will, to be alliterative here, pragmatic, proactive, professional prioritization of your efforts so that we can provide the funding necessary and that you can show us where the exceptions need to be as soon as you see the need for exception. That helps us do our work. So with that, Mr. Chairman, in the spirit of things, I'll yield back the rest of my time and look forward to the next event as an update.
I'm going to go back to Jackie Spear. If she's on, we'll take her now. Apparently not. Ms. Spear, your turn. Very good. We're going to go to Mr. Scott then, and then we may start a second round of questions depending on where we are. Good. Austin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Kirkland, glad to have you at Robins Air Force Base. Look forward to seeing you next week. I know that you've spoken to a lot of the issues with software. One of the things that is happening at Robins Air Force Base is the Advanced Air Force, or the Air Force Advanced Technology and Training Center, where they are using technologies like 3D printing and other new advanced technologies for manufacturing parts that in some cases have been obsolete, and in other cases we're simply being charged significantly more than we should be charged for those parts. What efficiencies are you seeing from investments in these new technologies like 3D printing, robotics, and artificial intelligence? How are you continuing to foster innovation in the sustainment enterprise? And as much as we're happy to have the Air Force Advanced Technology and Training Center in Robins Air Force Base, at Robins Air Force Base, do you have the intent of doing similar facilities in other locations?
Congressman Scott, thank you, sir, for the question. Let me respond in 2 points real quickly. First, sir, you mentioned robotics at Warner Robins Air Logistics Complex. Happy to report the investments of the last 4 years have really, the advantages are we've removed 60 personnel from a hazardous environment. We've saved $5 million in automation savings. and we've reduced our hazardous material stream. All part of that, sir, while getting more aircraft components out the door at a better cost. We are partnered with the Rapid Sustainment Office in Lifecycle Management Center, which actually, sir, operates the ATTC you mentioned. We are partnered with them across a wide spectrum of advanced technologies. In conditions-based maintenance plus alone, sir, we've collaborated on our asks, our formal pump ask to the Air Force will be 160 million now over the FIDEP. And that is necessary for us to expand CBM at the rate we need to and have its advantages. Sir, with respect to ATTCs, there is, I believe, one being put in at Ogden outside in Utah, and I will also say there's one in Pittsburgh. But I'll have to take for record, sir, their entire plans to expand those units. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman Garamendi, one, I would like to invite you and the other members of the committee down to Robins Air Force Base to look at what's happening at not just at Robins as a whole, but at the Advanced Technology and Training Center. Obviously, while our private sector partners are an integral part of our national security, there are certain things that they do sometimes that very much irritate me with regard to how much they charge for certain parts that should cost small amounts. General, when we get into the software related issues, you mentioned this briefly, but one of the frustrations I think of the committee and of myself is that as we have paid the private sector to develop software, then they have turned around and said, well, now we own it, even though we paid the original cost of developing it. The new software, the Synergy Innovation Complex and other things, will we be developing our own software, or will we be predominantly updating the software that we have in our current platforms?
Congressman Scott, thank you for that question. The answer is both, sir. We have expanded our historic software maintenance mission now left into the cycle and do an awful lot of software development in support of our military weapon system program offices. And sir, you mentioned you're referring to intellectual property, I believe, that is often a boundary for us that we cannot get past. And so we work with the support program offices for legacy platforms because there are sustainment opportunities that we're missing. The better news, sir, is that for newer weapon systems in acquisition like B-21 and GBSD, those programs are being very innovative and doing the right things contractually now so that we will benefit with IP access for the life cycle of that weapon system. Thank you.
General, my time is up, but you summed up one of the things, doing the right things contractually, and that's an error that we've made as a country in the past, that I'm glad that we're not continuing to make those errors. I look forward to seeing you on Monday, and gentlemen, appreciate everything you do for the country. I yield back.
And thank you very much. You're on a series of questions there on the data, the availability of it. We're going to work, this committee is going to work very closely with the acquisition committees, including the appropriations, to deal with the ongoing problem of who owns the rights to the software, to the intellectual, and actually to the data itself. So we're going to go at that in full on. I see Ms. Spear has returned. Jackie, you have 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me? I can barely hear you.
Yes, we can. You're good to go.
Hold on one second.
You're good to go, Jackie.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I have a question for General Kirkland and Vice Admiral Peters. At the oversight hearing in last year, I think, we focused on the problems with the F-35 logistics system, Alice, which has never worked well and is very burdensome to personnel. What Lockheed keeps saying they're fixing it. I'm curious as to whether or not it has been replaced. At one point, they were talking about replacing it. And have you seen any improvements?
Ma'am, this, Congresswoman, thank you for your question. I guess I'll go first. Ma'am, I'll need to take for record what our Air Force is seeing in terms of improvement because it's both operational and supply chain. I would not want to hazard or get outside my lane there. But ma'am, I can tell you that we are working to control our future with respect to F-35 software through hands-on ownership of the transition from Alice to the new Odin system. It is currently being led by our Kessel Run software factory in the Northeast, and they will soon transition and expand to the Air Force Sustainment Center enterprise, mostly centered at our Ogden ALC out in Utah. Thank you.
Ma'am, I'll follow that discussion by just mentioning that we do continue to work very closely with the F-35 Joint Program Office to make sure that Alice is functional for the F-35C and its first deployment with VFA 147 on USS Vinson coming up here in the fall. And to date, that is working. There are many, many problems associated with Alice, as you mentioned. The overall plan is to transition that system to Odin, and I think a key, as General Kirkland mentioned, is to make sure that the Navy and the Marine Corps and the Air Force are participating in that development, so that we're not completely dependent on the prime contractor. We pay exorbitant fees for the administration and the maintenance of Alice, and so this is all part of the Joint Program Office's plan to reduce costs and to make that system more effective. I agree with you completely that it is a difficult system. Over.
But how do we hold them accountable? As you pointed out, it's been very expensive. They were supposed to provide us with a system that works. It's never worked, and we keep paying for the fact that it doesn't work and paying all the maintenance costs. It just seems like, you know, stupid is and stupid does. Why are we doing the same thing over and over again?
I think we're completely invested now in Alice and completely dependent on that system for the operations. Without it, we can only go a few days of flying. So we have to work with the prime contractor to make sure that we can get to the next segment here, to first maintain what we have and then to upgrade it. And similar to what General Kirkland said, this is probably a better question for the Joint Program Office and OSD, but we are in full cooperation with the Joint Program Office to make that happen, ma'am.
All right, then let me ask this. Do any of the parts for the F-35 come from China? Does anyone know?
I will take a stab at that, just to say that we track, the main components very closely, and I don't know of any main components on the aircraft that come from China. As you go down into the supply chain at the third or fourth tier, it's very likely that there are some electronic parts that come from China, but we'll have to take that one for the record to get you a more detailed response, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know my time is almost expired. Let me just suggest that as we think about readiness in the future and the maintenance of our equipment, we've got to be very careful about any parts coming from China and the potential for malware to be embedded into any of that equipment or parts. So I would just like to put that front and center and make sure that we're all operating with our eyes wide open. And with that, I yield back.
Ms. Spear, thank you very much. Indeed, it is a major concern. The entire F-35 system is of enormous concern to the committee. The chairman has weighed in on this in a very big and important way this last week. There are numerous meetings going on. I'll make sure that all of my subcommittee members know of those meetings. The F-35 is a huge problem. And one of the principal problems is that we buy more planes We're not able to maintain the older ones. So the more we buy, the worse the overall performance has been. That is going to stop. There is a very deep concern in this committee about the F-35 overall, including the issue you raised, Jackie. And for General Kirkland, the hearing yesterday in the Strategic Arms Subcommittee was extraordinarily troublesome. To the question that Ms. Spear raised about, by the way, where's all that stuff coming from as you put together all these new platforms, and particularly the electronics, the software and the like. It is an enormous concern across all of this. And ultimately, it comes down to the folks that are here in uniform. You're going to be left with, okay, how do you fix it? And I don't know that we have an answer. So we got to start where Mr. is, and that is you start with doing it right in the first place. And so, Jackie, stay on the issue. It's an important one. We are formally past the time of the hearing. We were supposed to end about now. We took a half-hour break. In between, if the presenters are willing to stick around, I know that there's another round of questions from Mr. Lamborn. I know Ms. Lurie has one. I certainly have about another 5 hours of questions that I'm not going to ask. Doug, you're shaking your head. Was that a yes? You are finished. You're finished. Okay. I read your lips, didn't hear your sound. Ms. Lurie, another round of questions?
Yes, well, thank you, Chairman Garamendi, and thank you to the witnesses for willing to stay a little bit longer and answer some additional questions. Our primary focus, I think, should be what we're going to do to increase our presence in the Western Pacific and counter to the Chinese threat. And, you know, in the Sea Power Subcommittee, we can talk about building more ships. But the other part is there's 3 parts to this: building more ships as quickly as we can, operating the ships that we have as efficiently as possible, which, you know, maintenance fits into that, and then not divesting of the ships we have that still have usable life. So I want to touch on those last 2 things, and I think we already talked about, you know, the maintenance and whether maintenance drives operations or getting back to maintenance supporting operations. But, you know, the last piece of that is that the Battle Force 2045, the plan that the last administration put out, I feel like we didn't get a lot of good background information on what the assumptions were made that helped to build that plan. Some of those assumptions are driven by the potential adversary and how we will respond to that. But some of those assumptions are driven by our capacity of the industrial base to build ships, our capacity of our, you know, repair community to repair those ships and get them back out on deployment as quickly as possible. But the other piece is we can't decommission ships faster than we can build them. So that plan does have us decommissioning, I think, 10 cruisers in a very short period of time. And, you know, I lived it. I served as the XO on a cruiser, the USS Anzio. We had a 14-foot crack in the hangar bay. We had a lot of issues, and we had not had any of the HM&E upgrades that some of the other ships had had. But knowing that the combat system upgrades are possible due to the architecture of the Aegis system, and knowing that we've invested a sizable amount of money in several of our cruisers, I would really like to know, Admiral Galinas, some perspective on, you know, hull by hull. Can you provide us information on those cruisers that still have remaining life? I think we need them as air defense platforms. We can't build Flight 3 DDGs faster than we're planning on decommissioning the cruisers. And so I'd really like to, and you might not be able to provide the granular information at this hearing today, but have that information hull by hull on what upgrades have been done to the cruisers and what the estimated cost would be to extend their lifetime.
Yes, ma'am. No, that's a great question. So, yes, I will. I'll take for the record to get back with you on a hull by hull assessment. We can certainly provide that to you. What I will tell you, you know, on the decommissioning of ships, and we did take a hard look at that, and it really, you know, in some cases we're, I'll say, divesting of legacy capability that. In some cases, it really is costing us a lot to maintain, and we're just not getting, I'll say, the return on investment from a warfighting capability standpoint. So, you know, we make those trades, but it's also an opportunity to kind of, you know, reinvest that money into new capabilities. And we've got a number of, as you well know, new ship designs, you know, either in the shipyard in the case of the frigate program up at Marionette. We're looking closely now at the DDGX program, and that's quickly starting to evolve. The light amphibious warship is coming along. We're also looking to recapitalize the logistics ships, as well as a lot of the work that we're doing in the unmanned system. So I think and then not to mention what we're doing on the submarine side as well, with some early design work on the SSNX, right? So, I think we're kind of, I'll say, at a little bit of a kind of a transformational moment here, kind of on ship design, especially with the unmanned platforms. And I know there's a lot of discussion.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Admiral. I know you could talk at length about this, and we can probably have a separate conversation, but my time is limited. I really just wanted to point out that from our perspective as lawmakers, I feel like there isn't a clear strategy, a clear maritime strategy. Like, what is the goal? Do we need to have more presence there today? And if that's the case, I feel like you would have clear direction to say, I'm focusing all my efforts on getting that, getting everything we have out of the ships that we already have, because we have them and we know their capabilities and their limitations, but we can put them there today and make them part of this complex battle problem. But without a clear vision like that, it seems like we're all over the place. We are focused on new capabilities. I'm all for, research and development and developing new capabilities. We have had a bad track record on development of several of our last classes of ships and not reaching the full operational capability that we wanted, LCS and the mission modules, DDG 1000. We can talk about those things separately, but and it's kind of clear in the comments as well that you just made on the previous questions that I asked. I mean, you said we just sort of notionally came up with a 20-year plan for the shipyard optimization. But if you had more clear guidance, you might be saying, darn, I need to get this done in 5 years, and what do we need for that? But I'm just kind of putting all of this into the perspective of, and perhaps you agree or disagree, that there just isn't a clear vision of like what our priority is and what the urgency is. Do you feel like more guidance and vision on that would be helpful for you to prioritize these issues?
Yes, ma'am. No, I feel like we have the right the right guidance and the right strategy out there.
So what is that guidance? Is it the Battle Force 2045? Is it previous 30-year shipbuilding plans? Like, none of the guidance that I see is very granular, and it really doesn't say like this is our #1 priority.
Okay. Yeah, I can see, maybe with where we stand with the 30-year shipbuilding plan, but, the force structure work that's been done, I'll say over the last, year or so, I think that provides some pretty good indications in terms of the capabilities required, with a couple of different options on how to equip that force with that capability.
So how much input did you have
Elaine?
into that plan? Okay, sorry, Chairman Garamendi. I know my time is expired.
We're going to try to pay a little bit of attention to the clock. The questions are always good and they're provocative, and you're headed down a path that we need to pay attention to. Some of that path is over in the sea power, and I know that you do sit on that. But all of this tends to come back to this committee. Whatever those ships are, if we're going to hang on to the cruisers, somebody's going to maintain them, and this committee is going to be responsible for that maintenance. So there's an interoperability here between this. One of the things that goes beyond this committee, and I know all of us sit on multiple subcommittees, is the new administration is going to look at its strategies. And sometime probably towards the end of this year, maybe early next year, there will be a new military strategy laid out. China, Russia, whatever, and the Space Force and all the rest. Ultimately, this committee must pay attention to that, because all of that will require continued maintenance and its operational capabilities. And so we'll be engaged in observing what that strategy is, looking at the new equipment, platforms, satellites, et cetera, and then, okay, how's it going to get maintained? What are the resources necessary? What are the facilities necessary? So a lot of what's going on here is in flux. And Ms. Lurie, your question is provocative and necessary. I'm going to, I think, All the other members have left. If that's not the case, let me know. You have, Mr. Wilson, you are still here. You've got another round of questions. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a final question for General Gamble, and that is, I'm very grateful to represent Fort Jackson. And General Milford Beagle has just been a super leader at the post. We will miss him, but always a problem that has to be addressed. And the word flux comes to mind that the chairman just used, and that is when we have sequestration. And so how is the Army handling the indecisiveness of sequestration, and are we back on track maintaining our capabilities despite the sequestration?
Congressman, thanks for your question. For Fort Jackson in particular, the chief is, that's where we bring in new soldiers and train our future soldiers. It's absolutely decisive to the long-term health of our Army, the flow of young men and women committed to the defense of our nation going through there. The Chief of Staff of the Army has prioritized people first, and all investments associated with that. One of the investments is in predictability of the flow of new recruits coming through our pipeline. During COVID, we thought we would be challenged in recruiting, and we met and exceeded our goals. So I believe, despite flux, as you rightly described it, fluctuations in many things, our economy, our levels of funding, wherever those fluctuations come from, our Army Recruiting Command and the leadership of our leaders at Fort Jackson and Fort Benning and other places where we train our new soldiers has been absolutely, phenomenal to smooth that out. But our leadership of our chief, the support your committee gives us has been absolutely critical to that, sir. Thank you.
Well, and it's so inspiring when I'm at Columbia Airport to see the young recruits coming in with their brown manila envelopes. You know exactly who they are and where they're going, and greeted by the USO, and then to see the very warm welcome by drill sergeants. And so again, thank you for your service. And I know that my military service, 31 years in the Guard, 3 sons who served in the Guard in Iraq, each of Afghanistan, and my youngest son, a good friend of Chairman Garamendi, as an engineer. Military service is so important. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. We have, I believe, all of the members that are still on have had at least one additional round of questioning. So we're going to move to the end of this hearing. A couple of things. I'm going to put a couple of things on the line. General Kirkland, in the most recent hearings, Strategic Arms and the other hearings, the Air Force is going to have a large number of new platforms, extremely sophisticated platforms. Some of this is still classified, some is out there publicly. We need to know, this committee needs to know what are your maintenance plans for those new platforms? I don't want to have another F-35 fiasco. So let's start. We need to know. So, and that goes all the way down from the GBSD to a lot of other things. So I want to have a briefing from you within the next 3 or 4 months about the integration of your maintenance plans with the new platforms. Okay. Some of the others of the Navy, similarly, you have some new things coming on. So how are you going to maintain those? The Marine Corps, you've got a whole new strategy in the Marine Corps. So what does that mean to this committee? We haven't heard yet. We do know that you're about, I guess you're having all of your slightly used Abrams, you're sending them over to the Army, and the Army's going, what the hell did you do to maintain these things? So you guys work that out, but let us know, okay? What might be going on here. So what I'm looking at here is looking at these things from the beginning all the way to the end, and Ms. Lurie was talking about the end. Are the cruisers really going to disappear? Well, there's this whole new China strategy. How does that fit into all of this? So I want to be clear with all of that. Also, we're going to go back at this. At yesterday's hearing, it was classified. I won't take it up now. I'll get to you, Mr. General Kirkland, on this in a different format. I've talked a lot about data. I want to hear from all of you about data mining. Somewhere in your records are paper forms of platforms that you're still operating and maintaining, probably going back a decade, maybe 2 or 3 decades. That data may be very useful in determining what you need to repair tomorrow, what's going to break tomorrow, what's going to be required. The Air Force has a good program underway on this. It's going to need to be supported, General Kirkland, with some additional personnel and some additional money, but it is data mining. A lot of historic data. I think it's, if I recall, the C-17 specifically, and I believe there's one other platform that you're using as a example. But and then with using that data for analytical analysis of what you need in terms of parts and what's going to break next. Predictive maintenance, I believe, is the word that we decide to settle on. I'm bringing that to your attention. I think it's important enough to really force the money to be made available. And I think it's a small amount of money. For the rest of you that are here, watch closely this best practice, which may be a best practice. If it turns out, I think you're going to know within the next 6 months whether it is or not. If it is, share that best practice across the forces and get ready to do some data mining. Finally, there are 2 elements that the President is pushing and the Congress, and that's called equity. That is equity in hiring. The minority communities, we've dealt a lot with hiring thus far in the various questions asked by the members. I was going to add early on that equity issue needs to be part of that hiring equation. So keep that in mind. We'll come back and ask you specific questions. If I don't, I guarantee there's about 200 other Democrats are going to ask. So, and quite possibly the president, or at least the vice president. Another one that I know all of us are interested in, and that is the small businesses. It was discussed earlier today, more in passing than in specificity. There are these small business opportunities that exist. I think it was Mr. Scott brought this up around all of the depots. Some of that has to do with the new technologies and the integration of the new technologies. So the small businesses are also an issue that I know the Congress is interested in, both Democrat and Republican side, and they're going to bang on me and I'm going to bang on you. And so pay attention to the small business opportunities that exist around your depots and maintenance facilities. So with that, I've not run my entire string of questions, but probably enough for the hour and plus. Thank you for the willingness to stick around through our 30-minute recess. And with that, I formally adjourn this hearing. Thank you all for your participation.